If you think that the BMW R1250 GS Adventure is the unbeatable king of adventure tours, think again. Let's compare it in detail with its rival number 1, the 2022 going into 2023 Triumph Tiger 1200 Rally Explorer that has a few new tricks up its sleeve. Rival number 2, the Ducati Multistrada V4S that takes performance adventure touring to a whole another level. Rival number 3, the KTM 1290 Super Adventure S, not the R because that is the fairer variant to compare. And the final candidate on this comparison is the new kid on the block, the Harley Davidson Pan America 1250 Special, which is a surprisingly good first attempt at the adventure segment by a company that's been cruising on chrome for over a century. Question is, which one of these flagship top spec adventure tourers is the most ideal for your idea of adventure touring? And before I dive into engines and performance, let me talk about the first thing you'll notice when you first hop onto an adventure bike. How tall is it? The 2023 1250 GS Adventure is among the tallest with a 35.8 inches stock seat height, but the standard seat is adjustable and can be lowered by 0.8 of an inch or 20 millimeters. You can also buy an optional low seat which can reduce it to 34 inches. Similarly, the Tiger 1200 Rally Explorer, or T-Rex for short, also gets adjustable seat height from 35.2 to 34.4 inches. The optional low seat can lower it another 20 mm. Ducati is lower than both at 33.9 inches and the standard seat can be lowered to 33.1 inches. The optional low seat can reduce it by 30 mm, which is more than an inch lower than the standard seat height. KTM's standard seat also has 20 millimeters of adjustment. An optional low seat can give you another 10 mm. The Pan America seat adjustment is similar and the low seat option gives you 32.4 inches of seat height. Another cool trick all these motorcycles can pull off is that you can set the suspension preload to the minimum and get your feet even closer to the ground. They just call them different fancy names that I'll talk about when we compare suspensions. But once you're comfortable with how far or close your feet are to the ground, the weight is the next thing that comes to mind. On paper, the Ducati and the KTM may look like they're lighter than the others, but their standard trim doesn't come with a lot of accessories that are standard on the Harley, Triumph and BMW. Once you add them, the weight is fairly comparable. I will talk about those accessories when we get to that section. Tiger Explorer is a bit top heavy thanks to the massive tank. The Pan America has most of its weight low down. The weight shouldn't discourage you from getting one of these, but to explore the farthest corners of the planet, you need the motorcycle to have enough range so you're not always looking for a fuel stop. And in that area, the BMW is the top of the heap and can conquer 350 miles with a massive 7.9 US gallon fuel tank. Triumph has replicated that tank size on the Tiger Explorer, but the triple-cylinder engine would find it hard to match the fuel efficiency and hence it could run dry before it catches the Beamer. The Multistrada is the fabled hare. It'll run really fast, but it'll be spent before the others. KTM Super Adventure S, or SAS for short, seems to have respectable fuel efficiency and tank combination and could get pretty close to the Tiger. The Pan Am also claims a respectable fuel efficiency and could get pretty close to the Super Adventure. With the practical stuff covered, let's dive into the fun stuff. Performance comparisons. All of these engines are legendary in their own right, so I'm not going to wax eloquent on their technical specifications. All I'm gonna say is that all of them have enough power and torque for highway speeds, around town riding, as well as fast off-road shenanigans. The Beamer's twin boxer engine and the Ducati's V4 engine do seem to be smoother than the others. For around town, low speed rides, heating tends to be an issue with bigger engines, but compared to the rest, KTM's split radiator and vent systems are designed to do a better job at blowing the hot air away from the riders. Of course, all the other manufacturers do make similar claims, but the Tiger Explorer and Pan America have been criticized by a few reviewers for heating at slow speeds. Interestingly, 3 out of the 5 motorcycles are chain driven and all have slipper clutches. BMW and Triumph continue to stick to shaft drive that has the upside in terms of longevity as well as almost zero maintenance. All the bikes have 6-speed manual transmissions, but the quick shifter is an optional extra on the SAS and the Pan Am. The 2023 GSA gets the premium package as standard in the US and that includes the quick shifter. Braking systems on all 5 bikes are top of the line. BMW's website does claim that the current Hayes brakes are expected to change to another manufacturer. I wouldn't be surprised if they go with Brembo like the others. All of them have lean sensitive ABS. The KTM ABS can also be switched off in the rear wheel for some off-road shenanigans. The BMW and Triumph have stuck to cross wire spoked wheels which are tubeless. Ducati, KTM and Harley have alloy wheels as standard. Ducati and Harley do give you the option to switch up to tubeless cross-spoked wheels, but with KTM, that's only offered on the Super Adventure R model. It's important to note that the Triumph is the only one that stuck to a 21-inch front and 18-inch rear wheel combination, which is truly off-road spec, while the rest have gone with the more on-road friendly 19 and 17-inch combinations. BMW, Triumph and Harley come with dual sport tires which are decent for street and capable off-road. Ducati and KTM come with sports touring tires in standard trim, but you can always buy more off-road oriented tires for both if you so desire, because the suspensions on all of these bikes are really sophisticated and can handle a wide range of riding conditions. The BMW R1250 GSA has a unique telelever front and a paralever rear suspension. Semi-active suspension is standard in the US, UK and India on the top trims. BMW calls it Dynamic Electronic Suspension Adjustment or ESA. In Canada and Australia, the optional extra packages are slightly different. Triumph and Harley have Showa semi-active suspension, KTM went with WP Apex semi-active technology, and Ducati uses its own Ducati Skyhook suspension. While all of these suspension setups have enough adjustability for the majority of the people who will buy these motorcycles, for the suckers for specs, it may be worth noting that the Tiger 1200 Rally Explorer has the highest suspension travel and the Ducati has the lowest among these five. But unless you can muster up the courage to jump these mammoths off-road, bottoming out any of these is not going to be that easy. For riders who care a little more about suspension feedback off-road, the BMW telelever suspension's riding on a cloud characteristic actually becomes a little bit of a disadvantage because of a lack of feedback at the edge of losing traction in the dirt. All these bikes have several suspension settings that can be controlled with switchgear and intuitive menus on the dashboard, and that is what enables you to adjust ride height by basically reducing minimum preload. New kid on the block, the Pan America 1250 Special with the optional adaptive ride height adjustment does it in the most unique and, in my opinion, the smartest way. The preload and hence the height is reduced when you come to a stop and goes back to original level when you ride off. On the other bikes, you will have to change that yourself every time hitting buttons on your switchgear and going into the menus. I wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the manufacturers do catch up and add that little trick on their next updated versions with the software update. Because of the clever algorithms and the semi-active suspensions, all the bikes have suspensions capable of fighting the nosedive during excessive braking. The BMW's paralever suspension is just inherently anti-dive because of its clever design. On the KTM, the anti-dive is an optional extra with the Suspension Pro Pack. And that's only the beginning of the long list of rider aids all 5 bikes are loaded with. The LED headlight setups also have adaptive cornering lights thanks to the IMU systems. However, on the 2023 models, BMW has decided to continue with halogen headlights until they can resolve the supply chain issues they're dealing with. Turn signals are self-canceling, much like modern cars. In fact, there are a lot of car-like features these motorcycles have. Keyless ignition, cruise control, hill hold assist, USB charging, multimedia connectivity, and tire pressure monitoring systems. Triumph and Ducati even get blind spot detection with a rear radar, which is not available on the GSA, SAS or the Pan America just yet. GSA gets 7 riding modes with the premium package included. Tiger gets 6 as standard, Multistrada and Super Adventure get 4. On the KTM, you can also get an optional rally mode for more control over traction control and throttle response. The Harley has 8 riding modes, 3 of which are customizable. All bikes have lean sensitive traction control, which adjusts the electronic input based on the lean angle as well as riding modes and conditions. As you can see, the bikes are fairly comparable in terms of electronics, but how the respective manufacturers have approached them is slightly nuanced. For example, the key fob on the BMW, Triumph and KTM gets you keyless ignition, keyless steering lock and keyless fuel cap. The KTM keyless system can be disengaged in case you want to go old school. Harley and Ducati decided to have keyless ignition but not keyless steering lock or fuel cap lock. Similarly, the cruise control systems on the Multistrada V4S and the Super Adventure S are adaptive and work much like modern cars. GS Adventure, Tiger Explorer and the Pan America don't get that convenience just yet. The dashboards are also differentiated in terms of how easy to read and intuitive the interfaces are. Most people like the BMW the most, but I suspect that's because the GS has been around forever. Everyone already knows those interfaces quite well. Objectively, the 1250 GS Adventure Adventure has the smallest 5.7-inch dash, while the Triumph and KTM have the biggest screens. Pan Am's font size has been criticized for being pretty small even after an update in 2022. Super Adventure's screen is also tilt adjustable for the rider's liking. All bikes have backlit switchgears except the Pan America. The user-friendliness of the interfaces and the ease of use of the switchgear is a matter of personal preference, so I would encourage you to try that out yourself at a dealership and decide if that's a deal breaker for you. In fact, I would say the same thing about the perception of vibrations and handling. A test ride is really the best way to make up your mind about that. And that leads us into accessories comparison, which varies a little bit in terms of what's standard and what's optional on these motorcycles. All bikes have adjustable clutch and brake levers, foot controls, windscreen, and seat height. Handguards and center stands are also standard on all of them, but that's where the similarity ends. BMW, Triumph, and Harley get engine and frame protection and skid plates as standard as well. All bikes get heated grips as standard except the KTM. Heated seats are standard on the T-Rex and the Multi, optional on the rest. The GS and the Tiger Explorer get aux lights as standard. 2022 Pan America 1250 Special gets Olin steering dampers to address the high-speed wobbles some customers reported in the previous year. Super Adventure S also gets WP steering damper as standard because on the 2022 model the frame has been shortened by 50mm. Of course, there are a lot more optional accessories available on each manufacturer's website. I've also compared some of those on my website, riderxp.com. Regular service intervals are the most frequent on the Pan America, but the hydraulic valve adjusters are a big differentiating factor to avoid the expensive valve adjustment service that the rest of them need every once in a while. The standard warranty period is the longest on the GS Adventure and the Tiger Rally Explorer. Once you take into account all these factors, the value proposition of your favorite bike would make a lot more sense. Here's a top trim price comparison of all the 5 bikes in the US, Canada, UK, India, and Australia, where most of my videos are watched. The Beamer gets 4 colors, Triumph and Ducati get 3, Super Adventure S only gets 2 livery options, and Harley gets 4 in the US and 3 in the rest of the world. Of course, if you prefer to get the same engine, frame, and essential components at a lower price point, you could consider looking at the lower trims. However, that would mean dropping quite a few modern amenities in the process. I do want to point out that some of the optional packages and trim levels may be set up differently across the country, so please confirm the prices with your local dealers. Another aspect I would recommend for some local due diligence would be reliability. These motorcycles have some of the most complex electronics and components in the industry, and it's not difficult to find one or the other issue in online forums. But then things do get exaggerated on the internet. Fans of the premium segment adventure motorcycles tend to accept the quirks as part of the adventure riding experience, and of course there are things like roadside assistance and large dealer networks that are part of the package to give you some peace of mind. Having said that, if you prefer motorcycles that are simpler to work on and are known for bulletproof reliability, please subscribe and hit the notification button to watch more adventure touring segment comparison videos coming up in the next few weeks. And before I get to the bonus part of the video, let me answer the question, which one of these bikes would work the best for you? The BMW GS has been perfected over 30 years and works for those who love its ability to go anywhere. Tiger 1200 is an equally capable platform, and to me it's a matter of personal preference between the two brands and the quirks of those two motorcycles. Multistrada V4S is different from both and would excite the ones who like to go fast on highways and twisties. The KTM is a super capable adventure bike which is also touring capable. If that's what you're looking for, it's a great package at a very competitive price point. Harley, on the other hand, is a capable tourer which could also be taken off-road without a worry. For American enthusiasts, another added advantage is the ease of access to a Harley dealership. There are a million of them wherever you go in the US. Let me know which one's your favorite, and if you like what you see, please share this video with your friends and help me grow this channel. And as a bonus, here's an exhaust note comparison of all 5 motorcycles.